Isn't it interesting that a group of people can walk into a room and see the same exact thing, and all of them come back with completely different experiences? It's like art, for example. Imagine a husband and a wife walking into a museum and seeing one piece of art. One of them sees beauty and grace in the art piece, and while the spouse sees turmoil and tragedy in that same exact piece. My name's Lyle, and I'm just so honored and humbled to have this opportunity to do my very first video sermonette. My pastor and my wife finally gave me permission to go ahead and do this, and they're actually not the same person. And so I'm excited for the opportunity to do this. This video sermonette is from Numbers chapter 13, and it's called "What's Your Giant?" This is specifically geared towards the missions team that I'll be partnering from National Community Church headed to California, and the 11 folks that are going with me. Numbers chapter 13 is an interesting passage of scripture where the children of Israel have just been freed from Egypt, and Moses is leading them across the desert to the promised land. And he asks for one representative from each of the 12 tribes to go and to spy out the land that God has given them. God has already given them some marching orders. God has already made a promise to them. He's already said what they're going to see when they get over into that land. There are 2 points that I want to bring out and want to make sure that we highlight as we examine this scripture. But it all falls under this umbrella of unity. The husband and the wife that I spoke about earlier, they all are together, they're unified, and they're going in and they see something different. The nation of Israel, they're all broken out in these tribes, and they're told to come together and go out and spy this land. And of course there are 11 of us, I believe, going on this missions trip, and God is calling us to come together and to go out on mission to see a land and to be effective in this land. And so 2 things from the scripture that I want us to pay attention to in this mini little sermonette is this. First of all, embrace your diversity. Each of the 12 tribes of Israel have a distinct and specific function within the body there. When it came to Israel, they all had their different types of functions, which kind of shaped their worldview. It shaped their form and their function within the nation of Israel, and they had different values. However, God expected them to go under the same power, which was His name, and He expected them to go out as a unit and report back to Moses the exact same thing. However, I believe that some of their biases, some of their upbringing, maybe some of their experiences in their past, maybe the way that they had been shaped and formed as people, way they have been taught to lead, maybe even some bad experiences they've had as they were journeying from Egypt out into this current state that they were at, allowed them to forget a little bit about what God had called them to do. Allow them to forget about what God had brought them from. Allow them to forget a little bit about where they were going. I want to caution us. I want to caution you, even as a husband and wife team, but definitely my missions team. Please don't allow where you came from or your upbringing or your past experience to skirt you from where God is calling us to go as a team, as a unit, as a nation in this scripture. The second thing is the fact that they all saw the same exact thing but came back with a different report. And the thing that really began to break them apart was this giant that was in front of them. There were 10 of them that saw this giant and had one report, and there are 2 that saw those same exact giants but had another report. Now, we might be all from different walks of life and have different things going on with us, but sometimes, I dare to say most times, it are those giants that are in front of us that allow us to make certain types of decisions and choices. And I want to ask you in this sermonette, what's your giant? And how does that giant shape and form the choices that you and I make? As we go out as a unit together, my hope is whatever the giant is that's in front of us, whatever the giant is in our past, whatever the giant is in our hearts and our minds that we might be going out and expecting to see that we may not see, or that we don't see, that we actually run into, whatever that giant is, that it does not defeat us from the goal, it doesn't defeat us from the purpose, and it doesn't allow us to forget about the God who has sent us out. God has sent you out. God has called you out. And so many times the giants that are in front of us have allowed us to be disillusioned from what the call of God is in our life and the power of God on our life, and how he's gone before us continually and given us success and given us freedom and has given us favor. Right now, I just implore you to recognize what your giant is, and recognize how your giant may match up with your past experience, your tribe that you're from, your whatever it is that you represent, who you represent, how you represent it, and how that giant may influence each and every one of us to make certain choices and decisions. But know that your God is bigger than that giant in front of you, regardless of where you're from, regardless of what you've been through. Allow the unity and the call that you have together, even if you're a husband and wife team in unit, allow that to be proof positive that God is bigger than your giant. What's your giant? And will you allow God to slay that giant? Blessings.